Okay, today we're taking a look at another dash camera. It's the Z-Edge S3 Stealth dual lens car camera. This has two cameras, one pointing out the front of the car, one pointing out of the rear, and when they're both connected together, they'll record in 1080p at 30 frames a second. Inside the box we've got a 16GB micro SD card, some self-adhesive cable mounting things, a USB power adapter which takes a 12 to 24 volt input and outputs 5 volts 2.4 amps at 12 watts over dual USB sockets, and then that plugs into the front camera using this cable which has a right angle micro USB plug, and then the front camera connects to the back camera with this long cable which has two right angle mini USB plugs on there. And then we've also got another USB lead which is for data transfer. We can connect that up to that front camera if we want to. Oh, we've also got this piece of plastic which is used to help you route the cables around the car, because there are quite a few cables with this one, of course. Now here's the rear camera, quite a small little camera, not much to it really, just the input for the front camera to attach, and then we've got an adhesive pad here, and as you can see that moves up there, and you can make it lock in position by tightening up the screw on the other side. So that's your rear camera, 1080p 30. Then this is the front camera. Now this does a number of different resolutions, but when they're both connected together they record in 1080p 30. Now this is the mount for this, which is an adhesive mount for the front one as well. It slides into two halves like that, and you connect it up with the front camera by twisting it in that sort of keyhole type thing there, and then what happens is that part remains on the camera, this part here gets stuck to the windscreen, and then if you want to remove the camera you just slide it out. You can twist the whole thing off as well if you prefer to do it that way. Now if we just have a look around the camera, you can see you've got the lens on the front here which can be moved up and down. The whole thing can't tilt and it can't point left and right either, so you've got to be quite careful with your positioning of this one. Here's the input for the power on this side, and then on the other side that's where it connects with that long cable to the camera in the rear. You don't have to use the rear camera, it's entirely optional. And on the top here, micro SD card slot and a reset button, and below there we've got 5 buttons which activate various features as well as navigating you around the on-screen menus. Now I should state at this point again, there are some standard features that apply to all dash cameras. They all auto start and stop recording, they all loop video when the memory card's full, they all run off USB power, you can press a button to lock a file that's currently being recorded, you can turn the LCD screen off. In fact, these features are all on this dash camera as well. Now whenever I say this, I'll still get a couple of people say, well, you know that dash camera you reviewed, can you turn the LCD screen off on it, because I really don't want it annoying me when I'm driving. Fair enough, but listen, I've got to say every one of the dash cameras that I've tested as far back as I can remember will let you do that, and by that I mean Now that said, once you've got the standard features out of the way, there are some differences between dash cameras. For example, this one, it's got dual cameras, so if you use them both together, they'll both record at 1920 by 1080p at 30 frames a second and leave separate video files on that micro SD card. However, if you just use the front camera on its own, you've got higher resolution options as well as different frame rates. But I've only tested it in the dual mode because I cannot imagine anyone buying this one, paying the extra for the rear camera and then just using the front camera. It doesn't make any sense. You'd be better off paying less and getting just a single camera on its own. So I've just tested that dual 1080p 30 mode. Other things on screen there, you can see the angle of view. It will take memory cards up to 128GB because it formats them in exFAT, and loop segment sizes there. It has an internal battery, this one. It uses that for the parking mode. If you bash the camera once it's sat around when it's not recording, it will wake up and record for a little bit, and that's the parking mode. It's not some sort of time lapse or anything exciting like that. And I should point out, it doesn't have GPS, this one. It's quite a simple camera, but no GPS means no speed measurements and location, all that kind of thing, obviously. I'm also not going to bore you by going through all the menus because they are exactly as you'd expect them to be. There's nothing out of the ordinary here at all. You can change all the settings, you can play the video files back on screen, you can press a button to turn the microphone on and off, you can press another button to activate the emergency recording. It's all standard stuff. One thing I will say, the manual on this one, well, the quick start guide to start with, very good, very clear, nicely laid out, good quality of English on there, explains all the features well. And then if you want to delve into more detail on the features, the manual goes into even more depth, and that's well written as well. So yeah, two good piece of documentation there, a good camera for somebody to have as their first dash cam. Now, the reason I bought this particular camera is because I've been looking for a good dual dash camera that records in 1080p, both front and rear. So I was hoping this one was going to work out, and if so, I'm going to leave it installed in my vehicle. You can see now I've plugged in the rear camera. You get a picture-in-picture at the top left there, so you can see the view from both cameras at once. You can turn off that picture-in-picture if you want. So I installed it in my vehicle. Now, just temporarily, I put the camera at the top here because you'll see the heated rear window thingamajigs. You don't really want to put adhesive on top of that because when you pull it off, you're going to break those, I'd imagine. So as a temporary thing, I just shoved it in at the top there. Now the cable I've routed along this rubber section here. It goes from the back of the car all the way up to the front, up the A-pillar. That is an A-pillar in some no expert on cars. Across the top here and then down to the camera. And of course the front camera also has a power lead that runs up to it as well. Now one thing I don't like about these rear cameras is the fact that on a hatchback vehicle you're going to have a wire that goes across like this, across this big gap here. So that means you've got this wire hanging down. It looks fine when it's like this, but when you close the rear of the car, it hangs down in an annoying loop, and it's just something that kind of frustrates me. But anyway, I've got the camera at a bit of an angle here, as you can see, a jaunty angle. That's just because of the temporary fixing, but it would be difficult to get this one straight unless I put it right in the middle somewhere. Right, it's time to have a look at some sample clips. I'll have a couple of these available as well to download from a link in the video description. However, if you're able to select 4K playback on your application that you're watching this video on, I suggest you do it because you'll get a more true representation of these clips. Even though they're only 1080p 30, selecting 4K on YouTube allocates a higher bandwidth to playback. Now, you'll notice as we go along here, you'll get a bit of a jump on the video, and that's where I've joined two clips together, and that was the jump there. And what happens is, at the beginning of each clip, you'll get a few frames repeated from the end of the previous clip. So if you just join those together, as I've done in this editing package, you get that bit of a jump back. Nothing wrong with it. They do different things, these cameras. Sometimes they'll join seamlessly, other times they'll have a bit of a jump back like that one did. You'll see it on the rear camera here as well, where it does the same thing. But both cameras are recording in 1080p 30 as advertised. I've got some dual cameras in the past into test, and despite the fact they say they are doing, they're just upscaling and things, but no, these are both definitely 1080p 30. It's nice sharp video as well, but there is a little bit of an issue with the contrast. To explain this a little bit better, I'm going to bring in the rear camera. I'll put that up at the top left as a picture-in-picture. Now this is something I've done in editing. In the camera itself, these are two separate files. But you can see on the rear image, the sky there has got a blue colour to it, whereas on the front there's no blue there at all. It's bleached out, it's overexposed, which is also then underexposed the rest of the image. Now it doesn't matter too much at this time of day, the middle of the day, you can still see quite a lot of detail here, but it does seem like it's crushing down the contrast in the darker sections. But when you move to a lower light time of day, it starts to become a bit more of an issue, because despite the fact the sharpness hasn't been affected at all, you can still get a lot of detail out of this. You are starting to lose information from those darker sections. Then when we move to an even darker time, you can't really see what's going on at the sides of the image sometimes, where the car headlights aren't illuminating. You can't make out now what's on the left there at all. Is that a house? I don't know. No idea. Now normally you'd be able to see that with a dash camera. I know it's dark, but this camera's got wide dynamic range turned on and all the rest of it, and nowadays you expect better results than this in low light. It really is quite hard to make out what's going on. For example, imagine someone ran out in front of your car from the pavement. You wouldn't be able to get any detail as to what happened before they stepped out. Now when I found this clip on the card, I thought, oh yeah, this is when I went to the petrol station and got some cash out, so that should be me at the cash machine. And I couldn't make myself out. Now, it's because the light on the right hand side is making the left hand side of the image too dark, but when you don't even recognise yourself and you're barely a few feet away from the car, you know that there's something not quite right. Now whenever I've reviewed anything recently and pointed out anything at all that I'm not 100% happy with, I'll get a load of people telling me, perhaps it's broken, maybe yours is faulty. Well, there's nothing I can do about that. I've just bought this one for myself, and this is how it works. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think it is faulty. I think this is how it works. And I'm not saying it's a disaster, I'm just saying it's all a little bit too dark in places. Perhaps this is something that could be fixed with a firmware update, and fingers crossed it will. Now, other things I'll mention: when you place that camera at the back of your car, you've got to be quite careful as to the positioning of it. One thing I didn't realise until it had been on the car for a while is that whenever it rained, the rear camera was in a part of the rear window where the wiper didn't clear it. Of course, I didn't think of that when I put it on because the car was nice and dry. So yeah, just something to think about when you're putting that rear camera on. Remember, it's got adhesive on there, so you want to get it right first time. Now, in praise of the camera, I've got to say I appreciate their file naming system. You've got the year, followed by the month, followed by the date, followed by the time there, and then it'll have the front camera, which is A, and then the rear camera, which is B. Very easy to find the file you want just by looking on the memory card for the right time and date. Also, both files are at 11.98 megabits a second when you're recording in that 1080p 30 frames a second mode. Now, given the amount of time that I spent putting this camera in the car, routing the cables all the way around it, I was prepared just to leave it in there, thinking, well, the quality is good enough really, I could cope with it, this will do. Unfortunately though, the missus, who drives this car more than I did, said, have you done something to the car? Because the radio isn't picking anything up now, the DAB radio. You see in the UK we have DAB, digital audio broadcasting, they just call it digital radio now. But unfortunately, the camera is cutting off the signal to the digital radio. Now, I've had people say this to me before with other cameras that I've reviewed, saying it cuts off their digital radio, and it never has done in my Mini. It's always worked fine with every camera, up until this one. So I had to do a bit of a negotiation and say, can I just keep the camera in the car for a week? It means you can't listen to the radio for a week, but I'll get enough footage to be able to put this video review together, and then at the end of the week I'll take it down, put the original camera back in, and you can have the radio on again. So that's what we did, and all the footage you've seen in this video has been taken with the radio switched off. As soon as I took the camera out, I put my original camera back in, which is a Viofo A119, which has never given me any issues, and the radio came back full strength again. So that's the tale of my experiences with the Z-Edge S3 Stealth. For me, it's a case of close but no cigar. If you like the look of this, there'll be links to purchase one in the video description text box. However, personally, I'm going to keep on looking for something that's a little bit more suitable. Anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.